Hello, and welcome to the Three Questions podcast, where we dive deep into the world of wealth management and connect you with industry experts. I'm your host, Wayne Baxter, Senior Executive Manager at One Capital Management. If you or someone close to you is thinking about relocating or purchasing real estate in Arizona, you will not want to miss Three Questions podcast. We're going to address the three questions to ask when considering a move to Arizona. Thank you for taking time to check us out. And if you enjoy this episode of Three Questions, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcasts and YouTube channels. On this episode of Three Questions podcast, our topic will be focused on the three questions to ask when considering moving to Arizona. Now, American and Canadians increasingly are relocating to Arizona for a variety of reasons, ranging from obviously the state's warm climate to economic and lifestyle benefits. Now, with relocation comes several factors to consider. Again, my job as a wealth manager is to obviously go through all of them, but one of the main ones, and I say you need to ask is, where am I going to live, right? If I'm moving to Arizona, where am I going to, right? So to assist with educating and informing us so that we can make better decisions, be prepared, I've invited Gilbert, Arizona-based Scott Fuller to join us. He is the founder of azhomeadvisors.com, and Scott assists his clients who are looking to either buy, sell, invest in, or move to Arizona. Scott, thanks a lot for making time for us today. Great to see you. Thank you for joining the podcast.
Wayne, I appreciate the invite. Happy to be here and answer any questions I can for you.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate your time, and I could probably talk a lot about Arizona, and I'm actually going to be heading to Phoenix, Scottsdale area on the weekend. Looking forward to that.
Oh, fantastic.
And I guess what I would say, just off the top of my head, we're going to talk a little bit about it, but it's just, I guess we could probably get into it right now, is your perspective. When I go to Phoenix, I cannot believe how this area has expanded and grown. And I'd really be interested in your perspective on this remarkable evolution that we're seeing. Last time I was there, we actually flew in and just took lifts to get to where we were going. Quite frankly, it was to a hockey game, believe it or not. And the driver was telling us that the population of the greater Phoenix area was 5 million people. And I was stunned. I had no idea of the population growth of that area. So I'd like your perspective on it, from the idea of, the relocation, the way the real estate market has grown, and just your overall take.
Yeah, it's interesting. Phoenix metro area had some slow and steady growth really through like the 80s and the 90s. And it wasn't until about the early 2000s when, everything kind of exploded. Basically, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a mortgage loan, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
remember those days. And that really exploded construction and a lot of the growth that was happening, especially in the residential side of it in the Phoenix metro area. We had, basically, a lot of speculative investors that were coming into the market purchasing homes. And that, Phoenix wasn't alone. That was a lot of markets where we were seeing that take place.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the fallout of that, there was a pretty drastic fallout with, a lot of homes that dropped, maybe 50, 60%. I think the difference was back then, Phoenix was maybe like a two or three trick pony, meaning from industry standpoint, there wasn't a lot of diversification in industry. We saw, maybe large industries were call centers. That was really big. Warehousing, some manufacturing, obviously education with ASU. But besides that, there wasn't a lot of, background and structure to be able to handle, the amount of, growth and development that was being done. Fast forward to like the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen that, industry diversification increase. It's huge. And I think a lot of that is because as companies and as employees and workers have gotten priced out of higher priced markets, specifically on the West Coast and in California, they've moved operations, whether it's their full-time operations or maybe satellite, out to the Phoenix metro area, which has brought a ton of jobs out here. But it's also diversified the economy a lot. So not only do we have, education, we still have the hospitality, which is a lot of people come out here and visit if they're going to Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, those areas. But fintech is real big. We've got chip manufacturing out here, which is huge.
And there's going
We've
to be
got
even huger. There's a massive development in that space.
Oh yeah, well yeah. Taiwan Semiconductor, right, is coming in.
Yes.
You've got Chandler with a couple locations. You have, ASM. You've got a couple others that are out here as well. But not just that, general tech, and then healthcare. Healthcare has just exploded out here. We've got a Mayo Clinic. We've got more hospitals going up, but that's because we have more of an aging population. So we have to be able to have the resources to really support that. So, I think Wayne, it's just we will the next turn. I would say the next downturn that comes, we're going to be very resilient and we're going to bounce back very quickly just because we've got, a really good diversified industry base and a lot of, great workers and great opportunities out here. So it's an exciting time to be here. Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually one of the clients I have, and they're probably going to be listening to this. We're doing their financial plan, and we're thinking out as I always do long term, and they're already planning. Their financial independence date is early 2030, 31,
Hmm.
and they're planning. I'll have a referral for you because they're looking to move to the Phoenix Scottsdale area. That's the plan. Now
Fantastic. Yeah.
they have some specific needs. For one thing, they don't want wherever they go, they don't want to drive. They want to be able to be in a community where everything is self-contained and they don't need a car.
Yep. 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 Got
So
plenty of those. Absolutely.
anyway, the time will come, you know how time flies when you're having fun. We're only talking, believe it or not, we're in 2004, so we're only talking about 6 years away, and that's going to go like
It
hello.
always does.
Like where did the time go, right?
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
right.
why don't we get to our let's get to our three questions to ask when considering a move to Arizona. And I'll just bring this up. I mentioned it at the beginning, and I think we kind of keep this in mind. This applies not just to, folks moving from, say, California to Arizona, but, I have a fairly large cross-border practice, a lot of Canadians moving down to the US as well. So, and we'll probably chime in on not just the people moving from different parts of the US, but also for the cross-border relocator as well. So,
For sure. Yep.
question
We
number
work with a lot
one.
of those. Yeah.
Right. So this is actually a really good question. Should I buy resale or new construction? That's a good question. Scott, what are your thoughts?
That is a great question. I'm going to start off with kind of the obvious answer, which is for people who are looking for, something newer, not something that's going to have a lot of upkeep, something that's going to have a warranty, maybe a little bit better quality of components as far as windows, insulation, different things like that. The obvious answer comes down to new construction. Other things to consider, though, is new construction typically is going to be done by local or national builders, and they're looking to kind of maximize the amount of space that they're building on, obviously to turn a higher profit. So when they do that, they're building smaller lots, larger homes on smaller lots. So when we're talking about lot size, that might range from very small lots, maybe like 4,500 feet to 5,000 feet, up
Hmm.
to maybe 6, 7, maybe 8,000 feet is going to be the largest lot you're generally going to find if you're under $1 million. Now, if you're over $1 million, then you can get into something that's going to be larger. But generally speaking, they look at how they can maximize their return, but they're also looking at kind of what people are starting to look a little bit more for now, which is people are looking to not have a lot of space outside that they have to maintain necessarily. They want community space, right? They want the amenities, but they don't have to be mowing their backyard or, pulling weeds or things like that. So if you're looking for something that's going to be lower maintenance, then new construction is certainly going to fit that bill. The other thing is new construction typically happens on the perimeters of a city or of a metro area, right? Because that's where the available land is. So the pro to that is new construction. Generally, you can find cheaper new construction on the outskirts. And in the Phoenix metro area, believe it or not, you can still find, and when I say the outskirts, I'm talking maybe, 30, 45 minutes outside of Phoenix and beyond. You can still get into a 3-bedroom home, detached home for maybe $300 to $400,000 on the low
Really?
end, which is hard to believe because you coming from California, or,
I hear
Canada or
you.
anywhere else, like that's unheard of. So if you're looking for a lower price point and still being able to get into a house and have it be new construction, really get the best of both worlds, then that's new construction is going to be a good option for you. The caveat to that is that if you're looking to, if if you're working in kind of the inner circle of Phoenix, then that might give you a commute of 45 minutes to an hour. So that may not be something that you're necessarily looking for. The other thing is the battle between new construction versus resale has a lot to do with the economy and what's happening with interest rates. So what we've seen over the last 2 years, since rates have risen since their lows, right, since 2022, the new builders have a lot more ability to be able to offer incentives that general homeowners and resellers cannot offer. I'll give you an example. So if we have, the greater Phoenix metro area, if the average, let's say a home is being sold for $500,000 and maybe there's a little bit of work that needs to be done to it, the seller may offer the buyer a credit for $10,000. And that's about the average right now. Seller offering a buyer credit of $8,000 to $10,000. Now that can cover anything from work that needs to be done to the home for repairs or updates or anything like that. It can buy down the closing cost. On the flip side, if you're looking at what the builders are able to do, because they're doing this on a much, much larger scale and they can manipulate their financials differently, because a builder can come in at that same $500,000 price point. They can give you right out of the gate a 4.99% interest rate when maybe market rate is like 6.5%, 7%,
Right.
right? So they give you that right off the bat. They can also give you maybe $20,000 towards upgrades, right? And they could also maybe throw in, $10,000 towards closing costs. So it's very hard for resellers to, meaning, the standard person who's going to resell their home, to be able to compete in that market when they're competing against builders. So that's when it becomes much more desirable to buy new construction because you're going to get deals that you just can't get from somebody who's trying to sell their home.
Right.
And so I'd say that's another, certainly another thing to consider.
Interesting.
The other piece of it is,
Go ahead.
there's a lot of planned unit developments, especially in the newer areas of the Phoenix metro area. And when I say, areas, I'm talking about, if you kind of take Phoenix right here and you kind of look at the outside, a lot of these new communities, beautiful communities, are going to be maybe 10 to 20 years old on average, but they're going to have a lot of really nice amenities. And the farther out that you go, the farther out, again, you're going to have smaller lot sizes, what these builders are putting together, but the amenities, the community amenities are unbelievable. They're doing fishing lakes out here. They're doing, community pools, community clubhouses. They're doing all kinds of sports courts, walking trails. And so they have the space and the land that you're not used to seeing in California and people in a lot of other areas aren't used to seeing. So you can get a lot more bang for your buck in a lot of cases going a little bit farther out because they're allocating, they're saying, hey, if people have to live this far out and they're going to have to commute that far out, we need to give them a reason
Make it
to
as
not have
attractive
to
as
leave.
possible.
Right, because people don't want to leave their house. They don't want to leave their community. If we can give them enough incentive to stay in their community and enjoy the benefits of it, then they'll buy here. And so that's really been, a big piece of it as well that they've done in my opinion, a great job with.
This is a perfect segue into number two. Great answer, by the way, first question. Second question is, and kind of, again, leads perfectly from the first question is, what area, we're going to kind of hone in here. You talked about hypothetically, but maybe put a label, name some areas, or what area, we'll put it this way, the question reads, what area should I focus on moving to? Is there an area that you kind of given some of the ancillary benefits, but when you're looking, is there specific, for example, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, and my friends in Texas will probably not be amused by this, but I had a friend of mine who moved to Texas a couple of years ago, and he didn't last a year. And picked up stakes, and he's now living in Surprise, Arizona, as an example, which I would imagine would be, you would perceive to be in the periphery on the outside, what we call it, exurbs of the greater downtown Phoenix area. So that's an example, and talking to me, seems a little bit happier living in the Phoenix area than where he was in Texas. Not that I'm here to denigrate Texas in any way, of course, a lot of friends there, but wasn't for him. So now he finds himself living in Arizona. From what I can tell, I'm going to be actually visiting with him on the weekend, and I'm pretty sure he's pretty happy where he is. So what areas would you think about if you're looking for someone relocating? You kind of give us an overview on new versus old. Sure. What about geography?
Yeah, that's a great question, Wayne, because it is overwhelming. I mean, look, anytime you're moving to or considering moving to a new area, it's overwhelming, especially when you're in a metro area like Phoenix that has over, 5.5 million people. So where do you start? Really depends on the lifestyle and the goals of the people that are moving. And so I'll start with families with kids in school or couples who are planning to have kids that will be going to school. Because obviously for them, school is going to be top notch, very, very important. Generally speaking, the highest rated school districts and the most desirable schools are going to be in the southeast quadrant of the valley.
Mm.
So if we look at Phoenix, kind of that dot in the center, we're going to be looking down here to the bottom right. And those are going to be areas of Gilbert, where I live, which is one of the reasons we chose the town of Gilbert. So it's Gilbert, Chandler, Queen Creek, and then also areas of East Mesa. That's generally known to have the better schools. Now, Arizona has a state law where it's basically open enrollment. You can send your kids to any school that has an opening. All right. So that's different from a lot of states. A lot of states are like, you have to be within the school boundaries,
Geographic
within the
percentage,
district
yeah.
boundaries. Exactly. They're going to hold you pretty tight to that. Out here, as long as you don't mind driving, your kid maybe, 20, 30 minutes to school because you have a specific school you want to go to and they have an opening, then you're able to do that. But generally speaking, the Southeast quadrant is going to be more desirable, to do that. Now, a lot of people who might look at that and say, well, we want to be in Scottsdale because we've heard Scottsdale, there's a lot of things to do. It's a fun place, which it is. I mean, it's all true. People there they'll generally choose to do charter schools or private schools. Those are very popular up there because generally speaking, and again, I have to do the quotes like this, generally speaking, the school districts aren't as strong up there, from a testing standpoint. So
Interesting.
that's where we'll see people who are looking for education requirements. We have a lot of people. You described somebody who said, "Hey, we want to be in an area, and maybe we're retiring to an area where there's a
Yes.
lot of stuff to do, and we don't have to go anywhere to do it." Well, Del Webb figured that one out, and they build a whole bunch of sun cities out here, and those sun cities really start from, kind of just the northwest corner of, Phoenix, and that's going to go out up into, kind of Buckeye. So there's 5 or 6 different resorts from, Del Webb. All are beautiful. The newer ones are obviously the ones that are kind of spanning out farther east now. They're building these out, but that's going to be, kind of Peoria, Surprise, Buckeye, those areas. And those are fantastic. We've had a couple clients that we've, gotten into those homes just in the last month, and they love it because you're going to take into, account, golf. If you like golf, it's going to have the golf amenities. It's going to have all kinds of activities, no matter what you like to do. Even if you're the most boring person in the world and you're an antisocial, you're going to find things to do and you're going to make friends. I mean, they're great about it. So for people who are single, or people who are maybe a couple who doesn't know people in the area but wants to be able to get into an area and be able to get acclimated quickly and meet people quickly, those types of communities are fantastic for it because you're literally around people who are coming from everywhere. They're coming from
Right.
Canada, they're coming from Seattle, they're coming from Chicago, they're coming from Wisconsin. And so you can't miss with something like that. If you want to look at some areas that are maybe a little bit more high priced, but you want to kind of feel like, you get the life luxury and, hospitality, you want the nicest restaurants, you want to be able to have some staycations at some really nice resorts, and you're going to be kind of in that Scottsdale area, the perimeter around Scottsdale and North Phoenix. Going to be a little bit higher priced, but you're going to have, just again, some of the best entertainment options, dining options, accommodations, that you might, that you're going to be looking for, and you're just going to pay a little bit more for it. So I would say that's certainly, something as well. And then you're going to have, areas where it's all high growth, Wayne, but you're going to have areas that are newer high growth. It's going to be kind of West Valley. So that's going to be outside, Goodyear, Buckeye, because what we're seeing is a lot of the companies, especially manufacturing and warehousing, that are coming in from San Bernardino County in California and Riverside County in California, they're pushing their operations just over the border into Arizona. So they're starting to, take up a lot of space. So there's huge growth out there. So for people who are maybe coming from areas where they're looking for work, right? It could be blue collar work, it could be white collar work, really anything, but they're looking for work opportunities and they're looking for new jobs, then that West Valley is going to be something that they might really want to take a look at because, the job opportunities are huge. Um, and you combine that with housing that is still relatively affordable. So that would be kind of the area that I would, consider for that. And then you're just going to kind of have the infill of it, right? You might have people that really love the downtown vibe, right? Phoenix has a great downtown and it's exploding in growth.
They have the most famous pizza parlor in the entire country in downtown Phoenix. I've been there. Bianco's, I think it's the most
Oh,
fair.
okay, Bianco's or Blancos, or I
Blanc.
think it is.
I was rated the number one pizza in the U.S. I think it's called Blancos or Bianco's. Anyway,
If it's Blancos, I think I've had it. If it's Bianco's, I'm going to have to take a look because if you're telling me it's the best, then I've got to try it. I love
yeah.
pizza.
Well, the thing about that place is the one caveat I got to warn you is that the lineup, the wait list is. We were there on I think it was a Thursday or Friday morning, and we
Okay.
put our name on the list at 11 a.m. and they seated us at 3.
Oh, that's
So
wild. Okay,
yeah,
I'm
but
going to have
anyway,
to
it
write
is
that one
ranked
down.
the number one. I should know. Nothing like a well prepared podcast here. I should know the name of that, but I think it's Bianco's. Anyway, it's rated the number one pizza in the United States, and
Well,
it
that's
was.
something that I need to know about. So I'm
I
glad that you
will
mentioned this to
once
me.
we're
So
wrapped up here. I will be sending you the website link.
please do. Yeah,
Yeah,
please
for
do.
sure. Absolutely rated. Bianco, my Brian, my God bless Brian, my director of digital production here. It's
Bianco.
Bianco's.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
Bianco's. Pizzeria Bianco. Yes, the lineup to get onto the wait list
I'm
was.
going to have to check that out, Wayne. Yeah, that great
There you go.
recommendation.
There you go.
Thank you. Teaching me something. I love it.
There you go. It's the number one pizza restaurant in the United States, and it's spectacular.
Yeah.
Yeah, we brought my my wife and I think we brought 4 pizzas back to LA with us. Anyway,
Is it?
yeah, it
No
was
kidding.
awesome.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there you learn something new every day on Three Questions Web podcast
No,
here.
that's perfect. That's perfect because that's information I'm going to have to pass out to other people, right?
Oh, you're
And
out. Yeah,
so, yeah, that's good.
you got it.
Um,
There's actually a movie, I think it's on Netflix. There's actually a movie about that restaurant on net. You can look it up about the person that actually started that.
is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
Interesting. All right.
I-
Awesome. Awesome.
All right. Well, let's get to question number 3, and this is the one I've been looking forward to, and it's really, you know, the elephant in the room almost is how do you manage in the summertime? Really,
Yes.
and again, to add to that, and I have stories I could share on this with other clients who've moved elsewhere. No, there are a lot of snakes. There are other scorpions, critters, and all these things. What is this all going to be like for? And I think about folks moving from Toronto, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, and
Sure.
they're like it's going to be a culture shock to some degree anyway. Some good, some maybe a bit of an adjustment, but the summer weather is for some people is going to be a bit of an eye opener.
It's an adjustment, and I think it depends on what your expectations are and when you're going to be here. So as you know, we've got the snowbirds who are starting to flock back in because
Yep.
now we're at the end of September, you get into October. That's when all the restaurants start filling up. There's lines every night, so it's kind of the opposite, right? With a lot of different areas, that happens after wintertime ends and spring starts. So here's how I would answer that. 3 to 4 months out of the year, it's hot. There's no way around it. I mean, it's crazy. I think that you adapt quickly. Now, I've been here for 4 summers now, so I haven't been here that long, and I came from California after 36 years.
Yep.
California, in my opinion, is the best climate anywhere. So, but
You're not going to
there's
get
an
an
area.
argument from yours truly on that one.
Exactly. But you guys, I mean, you had just a couple of weeks ago in LA in the Inland Empire
Yeah.
area, you had temperatures 110,
Southern,
115.
I can tell you right now, I had 2 weeks ago, my wife drove me to LAX for a flight. I had to go to Miami, and we were going through the San Fernando Valley, and I think it was in Woodland Hills, and it was midday, late morning, 116 degrees.
Yeah. Which
It was
isn't normal, right? I mean,
toasty.
obviously
That's
that's
an
not normal
unusual,
there, but
that's
that's
not the
normal
norm in
here.
the, that's exceptionally hot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I look at it a couple of ways, Wayne. First of all, you don't have to shovel sunshine, right?
That's for
So,
sure.
some people be like, hey, I can't go outside in the wintertime because it's freezing cold for 3 or 4 months, and then I come out in the springtime. Well, we're the opposite, right? People hibernate a little bit in the summertime. You're six
I
months
can't believe
apart.
you said that. That's incredible because, I do have clients in Texas, and I helped a couple recently relocate from Toronto to Austin, Texas,
Hmm.
and had dinner with them one night at Austin Lamb and Cattle, by the way, great steak restaurant in Austin, Texas. And that was the question I had for them. They had been there for a year, and I wanted to spend some time with them. Went to Austin and saw them, and that was the question I asked them. I said, because I keep an eye on the weather, and I
Yep.
because they were there, and I would, my weather app on my phone, I would kind of check in and see what the weather would be like, and I would see that it was like 110 degrees, and it would go on day after day after day, and I couldn't help but think of them and how these folks from living in Toronto would deal with us day after day, week after week of this temperature. So when I went and had dinner with them, it was like the following March. And I asked them, I said, well, how did you guys manage with the summer? And my client said to me, he said, Wayne, when we lived in Toronto, in the wintertime, we stayed inside and we turned on the heat.
Yeah, that's right.
And now in the summertime, we we stay inside and we turn on the air conditioning, and the rest of the time it's like spring.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, and here's the other difference, though. Everybody says it's dry heat, but that makes a huge difference because if you're
Telling
in
me
Texas where it's
you're
humid,
preaching to the choir on that one. I'll
yeah,
vouch for you.
and a lot of people, and it just so that's something to point out. It's absolutely a dry heat. It rarely, is humid here. Maybe 20, 30% humidity when it's about to rain. Here's the cool thing that people don't understand in the summertime here is they think, okay, it's sunny and it's hot every single day. That's partially true. We get the monsoon storms out here, which are beautiful storms that come in and drop a lot of rain in a short period of time, cool things down, but you see some of the most incredible lightning storms you've ever seen in your life. It's like nothing I've ever seen living in California. So those monsoon storms are just amazing. It really just changes the mix up a little, or a lot, on the climate. So you get a lot of different types, and you'll get some sandstorms, or you get the weather alert on your phone, and all of a sudden you look and you see this huge, wall of sand coming towards your
I've
house,
seen
and
those on YouTube. Yes, I'm more than aware.
those are real. And and they last like it'll pass through in 10 minutes or so, and then you got a little bit of sweeping and cleanup to do. But there's really some cool things. And, to answer your question, how do you deal with it? Well, 75% of the houses have swimming pools. Well, that might be a little bit high, but let's say maybe 65% have swimming pools. Um, a lot of the places that do serve food outdoors are going to have commercial misting systems. So it's comfortable to be able to sit outside on a patio. And most restaurants do offer this. You can still sit outside in the summertime. The evenings are absolutely beautiful. Now they're hot, but it's just beautiful, right? So
Mhm.
you're wearing shorts if you like that, 3 to 4 months out of the year. You go find a body of water to be able to kind of hang out and chill out. Or, they really built a lot of indoor activities around, what are you going to do in the summertime? So since there's enough space out here, there's a lot of things you can do indoor, whether it's like indoor pickleball courts, sports courts, golfing, go-karting, really anything. They've done a really good job of that because they understand that for, a few months out of the year, people are going to be spending limited time outdoors. So I would say, from a climate standpoint, you get used to it. You really do. And then you've got people calling you up and texting you all the time and saying, "How are you managing this?" And I'm like, it's not as bad as like people make it out to be. You just it's fine.
And also, I guess just on the other point, when they asked, not to overlook it, but just the whole sort of perception of being out in the desert and having to deal with scorpions and other kind of critters and all that sort of thing. Is that something that's a constant sort of battle, or how to?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say it depends on where you live. So surprisingly, a lot of the areas in Arizona are farmland. The town of Gilbert used to be, back in the 1920s, was the hay capital of the world, believe it or
Interesting.
not. Now that's in the, we're in the smack dab in the middle of the Arizona deserts, the hay capital of the world. So when you are in kind of the farmland areas, and a lot of the housing communities are built in there, you're going to have limited snakes, limited scorpions. We have a black light that I'll take my kids. Well, when we first moved here, we don't do it too much anymore. But if you take a black light, you can go outside at night. You can look on the cinder block walls. You can look around, and you can spot these scorpions. And that's really the only way to find them, is with a black
So
light,
you're
because
not
they
finding them
show
in
up
your
like a
slippers, is what
marker.
you're telling me.
What's that?
You're not finding them in your slippers.
That's not happened before.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
read
exactly.
that. It's not happened before.
There you
Here's the
go.
key. You're gonna have pest control service at your house, and if you can keep the really the crickets and the grasshoppers, if you can keep those guys away, you're not going to have any problems with scorpions or snakes. That's pretty much
Interesting.
guaranteed. Now, anytime you're in this type of a desert, if you see my background right here, that's kind of their natural habitat. That's going to be a completely different story. So for a lot of homes, especially in Scottsdale, in that area north of Phoenix and northeast of Phoenix, that's true desert. So in those areas out there, you're going to have a lot more snakes. You're going to have a lot more scorpions, in your house, maybe in your house, but probably in your backyard and different things like that. And anytime that they're bulldozing, a new area to be able to build something, then obviously you're kind of moving that natural habitat towards something else, and that something else might be a housing community, for a period of time. So that also happens, but it's it's really not that big of a deal as long as you manage, and take care of your surroundings. You're going to be fine.
Perfect. Okay, so I got one more thing I want to bring up with you, and given the industry you're in, I can't really ignore it. So I know that you're
Okay.
aware of this settlement, this agreement that was reached, and this is a Sitzer Burnett class action lawsuit out of Kansas City, Missouri. I'm pretty sure you're fairly more than.
Yeah. I'm aware of it.
So
Yeah.
I was just curious, you're an seasoned real estate expert here. You're not just new to the game. How do you believe this is going to affect the real estate market in general? I'd even, if you have a broader view of things, and for Canadians that are looking to invest in real estate in the US, or maybe, or in Arizona, or they're thinking of moving here, like, if you can kind of put some color to that, and how it's, what's involved and what people need to be thinking about, I think it'd be a great way to wrap up
Sure.
the program.
So let me give a little bit more perspective to people who may not know exactly what this means. So basically, there was a lawsuit earlier this year that was done by some attorneys and some sellers against the National Association of Realtors, Keller
Yeah.
Williams, and I think it was maybe Compass Real Estate. What they were saying, they were saying that there was very little transparency when it came to the requirement to have to pay commissions. So what that means is when a seller signs a listing agreement with a listing agent, they're putting on there the commission that they're willing to pay that listing agent, but they're also um, it was expected that they would put the commission also that they're willing to offer the agent representing the buyer.
Mhm.
So that's how it's always worked. There's really never been any problems with that. And sellers usually have understood that, hey, I'm paying a percentage that goes to you because you're representing me, and I'm paying a percentage that's going to the agent that's representing the buyer. That way we don't have dual agency. That way you're both working in the best interest of your own
Right.
clients. Didn't have any problems. So they came through, and the settlement, which was it was settled, basically said that from here on out, a seller can still offer compensation in the form of a commission to an agent representing a buyer, but it can't be listed on the multiple listing service. So there's some additional forms that have been generated by the National Association of Realtors and some local boards, which basically say the seller can still offer a commission to the buyer's agent, and in most cases they probably still will. It's just disclosed differently, and there's additional forms that are used now to do that. The bottom line, Wayne, all it's done is it's created a ton of confusion out there, but in the end, the process remains the same. The seller wasn't required before the lawsuit to pay a commission to the buyer's agent. They did it voluntarily, and they can still do it now. It's just written and disclosed differently. So from a perspective of a buyer, it's very confusing. One thing that has changed is if I'm going to show a buyer a property, a home in person, I have to have them sign a buyer's agency agreement and another document along with that before I can show them that. So that has changed. Before that was optional, now it's changed. But it's all about being able to communicate with the buyer that here's how things are a little bit different, but the expectation is still the same.
All right. So I've talked to some other of your colleagues across the country, and one of their bigger concerns has been maybe the impact on first-time home buyers, and the fact that they have a buying and selling agent that aren't cooperating, and all of a sudden, they may have to come up with the additional, we'll say 2%, 2.5%
Yeah.
to make the relationship with their buying agent right. Again, I'm not wanting you to contradict what somebody else says, but is that something that you're mindful of, and do you think that's something that people should be aware of? And I guess again, for the thing about the Canadian coming down and looking to buy in real estate, and all of a sudden they find out their buying agent says, well, you have to pay me for, like.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And especially, I mean, the reality is a lot of people who are coming in to, especially first-time home buyers, if they're coming into the market to purchase something, they've got just about enough money to cover their closing costs and their down payment, and that's all they've got, right?
Right.
So one of the buyer is going to know from the first conversation before they look at the first property if the agent that they're working with is going to ask them to pay any type of a commission, because on one of the forms that they're going to sign, it's basically going to be, buyer to pay X percentage of a commission or a flat dollar amount to compensate the agent that's representing them, or they're going to pay nothing and the seller is going to pay. Now, if there's a property, most sellers are paying a commission, so it's not going to be on the buyer to have to pay that. But if a seller is not initially paying a commission, there is a form that can be submitted along with the offer that asks the seller to pay the buyer's agent's commission. So it can be asked, if it's not immediately disclosed that the seller is willing to pay, it can be gone back to the seller to say, we're going to pay. Obviously, again, it's confusing for a lot of buyers. And I think a lot of buyers might say, instead of me going to a buyer's agent to represent me, I'm just going to kind of skip all that. I'm just going to go directly to the listing agent. When you get into a dual agency situation like that, even if the seller is okay with that type of an arrangement, it's not in the best interest of either party to do something like that. So what we have to look at and put together is, how can we put together a compensation model that's going to work for both agents involved, that's going to be in the best interest of both of the principals that are involved, and in this case, the buyer and the seller.
Well, I think the key message here, I think, and I've said this before, is that I think if you're in the business of either a buyer or a seller, you want to be working with an experienced, seasoned agent that knows their stuff. And quite frankly, they're not living and waiting on that next sale. Quite frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to have, here's the thing, as I look at it, especially when we get into these kind of confusing topics, or now confusing topics,
you never really had to have in much detail before, quite frankly.
No, you didn't, because, it's kind of expected. But, the reality is we just have to say, hey, let's keep lines of communication open. and honest, and make sure that you understand what the expectations are, from everybody involved in the transaction. And we know we're going to have a great outcome, but let's just kind of, talk through the questions.
All right. Well, listen, Scott, one thing I'm pretty confident of it. We've had a great conversation today, and I'm
Yeah,
sure
likewise.
this has prompted some additional questions from the audience, from my clients, from my colleagues, from folks listening in across Canada, United States, or watching on YouTube, or however they're finding us. For those interested in contacting you directly, how can they reach you? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, they could call my cell directly, which is 925-567-6720, or the email address, Scott, SCOTT, at azhomeadvisors.com.
Yeah, and we put that right on, for the folks on YouTube. They can see that right on the screen, and we'll make sure that everybody get a chance to contact you. That we'll connect them. Scott, thank you very much for joining us. You were a great guest today, and I look forward to having you back. I'm sure we're going to have some other Arizona real estate related topics that we can definitely reconnect with. I'd love to have you back as a guest sometime in the not too far down the road.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks, Wayne. I appreciate the invite, and I love the new studio. That's fantastic. Looks
Thank you
great.
very much. So
All right.
Scott Fuller is the founder of azhomeadvisors.com. Scott Fuller, thanks a lot. We'll see you soon.
Take care. All right. Bye, everybody.
I look forward to bringing you the 3 Questions podcast, and I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. And to receive a notification when our latest episode has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule an online consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.